a lot of stuff going on here, Paul, when it comes to the Giants and the league. We're finally starting to get some news here. This is the official reporting day for NFL players. That's the most important thing. For veterans and non-injured players, the rookies and injured players and quarterbacks, I think, have already kind of been doing their testing and stuff. Now, just so fans understand, that doesn't mean that they're going to be hitting the field right away. There's going to be a ramp-up situation where it's only walkthroughs and strength and conditioning until about August 11th. Give or take, and then you start having some of the unpadded practices and workouts and no padded practices until August 17th. So give or take, depending on the team, there could be a day or two different in there. So you have to go 72 hours between tests with 2 negatives. So these veterans, Paul, aren't even going to be seeing coaches for another 4 or 5 days. So while it's great they're showing up, there's still work to be done before they actually start doing some work.
Yeah, I think, the one part of this that's confusing for a few people is that, remember, you had a couple of teams report a few days ago, and some of the COVID test results were coming out in terms of what's happening with positives and negatives. And I think what we all have to keep in mind is that the reason that the testing is actually done over the course of a couple of days is because there's a bunch of them. I mean, there are a lot of these suckers that have to be taken care of. And unless I'm mistaken here, John, they take a day to get the results back, do they not?
Yeah, I believe so. That's correct.
So I know that, everybody wants to say, well, isn't camp starting today? Why do they still have to test over the course of 2 days? Well, this is a very tedious and, quite frankly, scientific process, and everybody wants to make sure they go through it correctly.
And look, and there are false positives.
Yes.
And there are false negatives.
Yes.
So that's why you want to do multiple tests before you get these guys together and split the test up over the course of a couple of days because – you want to make sure that guys don't get infected between the tests, right? So, and remember, you could be infected, but it doesn't show up on a test for a couple days. So that's why you want to spread the test out over a couple of days. Then you have the physicals, which take another couple of days, and then the guys can finally start doing strength and conditioning walkthroughs and meeting with coaches. So we're still probably, weekend, Sunday or Monday before these veterans start doing stuff. That we can actually look at and watch, though, who wants to watch conditioning and walkthroughs is not exciting, but at least it'll give us a taste of exactly what's coming down the pike. So in terms of guys reporting and stuff getting started, that's the important stuff there. The other piece of news that came out yesterday, Paul, after the show was over, the NFL released a statement. I will read it. It's on Giants.com. The NFL today placed Deandre Baker of the New York Giants on the commissioner-exempt list. Baker was charged with multiple felonies, including armed robbery and aggravated assault, following an incident in May. As per the NFL's personal conduct policy, a player who is placed on the commissioner-exempt list may not practice or attend games, but upon request and with the club's permission, may be present at the club's facility on a reasonable basis for meetings, individual workouts, therapy, rehabilitation, and other permitted non-football activities. So, look, it varies from player to player what this non-exempt list, what this exempt list, Paul, means. We've seen players stay on for full seasons. We've seen players taken off quickly. It really depends on the case. The NFL does their own investigation of the incidents now, and they don't just wait for the legal process to play through.
Right.
So I know people are going to call and ask us, and our answer is going to be to the question, when is Deandre Baker going to be available? Our answer is going to be, we don't know, because the Giants don't control it. The legal situation does. More importantly, the league does. So I think you have to plan at this point that he's not going to be here until he is, and when he is, great. But until then, you plan as though he's not.
I agree with you, John. You don't have much of a choice, because if you don't plan in that regard, you're basically leaving yourself wide open to a disaster.
I mean, just remember when Ezekiel Elliott got put on the exempt list, and every day, it's going to get decided tomorrow. Oh, no, it's the next day. Oh, now there's an appeal, blah, 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 blah. And it was a drama for like a month, right?
Yes.
So just do your thing, and when he becomes available, great.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why they say, golden opportunity. Tom Coughlin always used to talk about opportunity. He loved that word, opportunity. Well, every single one of those young corners opposite James Bradbury has to understand right now that the doorbell is ringing, and you better answer it, because you just don't know what's going to happen to Baker, and this may be your golden ticket to try to earn a starting job.
Yeah, and the cover 3 story that we had on Giants.com for this week, Paul, was what's your biggest storyline from training camp? And my answer to that question was that who's going to be the other 2 starting cornerbacks.
Right.
And I'm counting the nickel guy as a starter because he's going to play more than half the snaps when they're out there on the field. So, look, we know James Bradbury's one. You think he's going to follow the other team's best receiver around, right? So
I think so. In a lot of cases, he will.
Right. Maybe not 100%, but in many cases he will. So who's going to be the other 2 guys? And, there are a lot of young players that can play those 2 positions on this roster that are capable and have the physical ability and skill sets to step up and seize those spots.
Yeah.
But as you well know, progression, and I use this phrase a lot, progression in the NFL is not linear. Just because a guy's heading into his second or third year doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take big jumps in their second or third year. That's not how it works. So these guys are going to have to step up and seize these jobs. And there's so many of them that can do it. Is it going to be Sam Beal? Can he stay healthy in his third year after being basically plagued with injuries in his first 2? Is it going to be Corey Valentine, who's in his second year coming out of a Division II school? Had some issues last year playing inside. Can he excel outside? Will Julian Love play one of the cornerback spots, or is he going to be a safety? Is Darnay Holmes going to be able to play outside like he did at UCLA? But he's shorter, so maybe he fits more at the nickel. Is Grant Haley in his third year going to seize the nickel spot? Montre Hardage, somebody that came over from Patrick Graham's team last year, was kind of back and forth on the practice squad in the 53 with Miami. Is he going to be able to claim a starting spot? So, to me, that is the number 1 biggest story of camp. How are those cornerbacks going to be able to play well, and who's going to step up to seize those jobs?
You know what's funny, John? As you were talking about that, I kept saying to myself that for months after months after months, we kept saying since the end of last season, in fact, even since the middle of last season, that the number 1 story for the Giants is going to be where are they going to find a pass rush? What's going to happen with Marcus Golden? And whether or not he comes back, the Giants still need to find a way to get to the quarterback. But to be honest with you, I think we have all kind of determined, amongst ourselves at least, that the Giants are going to have to scheme their way through. And we know they're not going to have a great pass rush. They may be able, through smokes and mirrors, to have a decent pass rush, one that may be adequate, but they're not going to dominate people by getting after the quarterback. We've kind of put that on the back burner.
Right.
It's that's a given now, right?
Yeah, I think we know what the pass rush is going to be because we know who the players are. Now, if Carter or Zimenez take a big jump, great, fantastic.
Sure.
But I think you go in assuming that it's going to be the exact situation you just described.
Yeah, our expectations have been muted, to be perfectly frank with you. Like, where are the Giants going to get the pass rush? Well, okay, it is what it is. Move on. And we put that on the back burner. And now, as you've just described, it seems to me the biggest dilemma has to be the corner situation, as you say, / nickel situation as well. That, to me, has clearly moved to the forefront.
Who do you like of that group to step up?
Well, you know, I have some mixed feelings on this because I thought Haley had showed something during the latter part of his rookie season, and then last year he just had a lot of trouble.
You know, the funny thing about it, he was kind of good at everything except for the coverage part. Like, he could tackle well, he blitzed pretty well, but when he got one-on-one with those really quick inside receivers, he had trouble covering them. Which is kind of important, by the way, for the position.
Well, it is, but he showed more of an aptitude to do that as a rookie.
Right.
You know, remember down the stretch of that season, he was getting that done pretty well. And so I was very disappointed with his regression last year. So I'm going to say right now, being that there are so many other unknowns, I'm going to say at least he has shown me over a small sample size from his rookie season that he could handle it. I'm going to say right now I would probably very timidly put my money on Grant Haley, but that's very timidly.
Okay, that's at the nickel. How about the other outside spot?
You know,
I love your big deep breath.
Well, John, we've now gotten to the point where this question overwhelms everything else.
Yeah, because Paul, if you can't cover, you can't win. You know that.
It's a big deal. And especially if you don't have a dominant pass rush.
And when you're going the first 4 weeks of the year and you're facing a bunch of teams that return their starting quarterbacks and offensive coordinators.
We talked about this all throughout the course of the offseason as to how the Giants could make up for the lack of having a dominant pass rusher. Well, you go to the Patriots' old system and you have a strong back seven, which means you've got great cover guys who are going to handle one-on-one and press, and they're going to be able to really get things done on the back end so you can handle the defense in reverse order. Well, that's fine if that's plan B and you've got the guys to do it. Right now, we've got a bunch of question marks when we look at that depth chart. So who is the guy?
If he's healthy, I think it's Sam Beal, but that's just a huge if.
Yeah, and that's a big. You know how I am about health. I grade players' availability a lot higher on their value chart than a lot of other people do.
No, you have to, Paul. Look, and the best indicator of future health is past health, right? I mean, that tends to be the deal with a lot of these guys.
I agree with you. So I would like to say Sam Beal. Let me put it to you that way. How about this? I would like it to be Sam Beal, and I would like it to be Grant Haley, but it would not shock me. It would not shock me at all if Darnay Holmes, winds up winning the nickel spot, maybe by default because nobody else has a terrific summer camp doing it and they think he's got the most potential. So maybe they allow him to take a shot at the nickel, again, out of default. And maybe on the outside, could Corey Valentine possibly win that job? I think maybe he could.
I think he's the sleeper, to be honest with you. And I know, Len, one of our callers, brings him up all the time. And look, you have to be careful.
He's got skills, John.
He was really good in camp last year playing outside. He gets his head around on balls in the air, especially on deep balls, which is really hard for some cornerbacks to do. He made plays in the ball in camp. He got beat sometimes, but he was always in the vicinity, right? I thought he played well. And that's a guy that is coming off of a, college career where he played Division II. So he's jumping up like 4 levels to get to the NFL. And, didn't have a professional weight room, got ready for the combine.
So you're giving him extra points is what you're saying.
I'm saying you have to grade his first year on a bit of a curve.
Yeah.
Because of where he was always going to be at least I expected him to be a developmental guy. Maybe I was wrong to think that. But when you drafted a guy in the 6th round out of a Division II school, I think it makes sense to consider him a developmental guy, right?
Yeah,
I
agree.
I think that makes sense. So I would expect there's a chance that he makes a bigger jump in his second year. Will he? I don't know. I think he has the ability and the speed to do it. So he would be my dark horse. I think raw physical ability. I think Beal is the guy with the most skills. And then I think, the super sleeper, just because Giant fans aren't familiar with him, is Montre Hardage from Miami, who Patrick Lamb clearly liked because after the coaches all got hired, he was one of the first guys they brought in, Paul, as one of those kind of, street free agents. So maybe he's got a real shot here too. I don't know. But the good thing is that the Giants have a nice set of wide receivers here, and I'll throw Corey Coleman into the mix too just because he's so athletic. We'll see where he is coming off his knee injury. But Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slayton are not easy guys to cover. So we're going to get to see these guys try to cover them in training camp. And we're not going to have as many padded practices, but guess what? You can judge how cornerbacks play in unpadded situations. You can see how they cover. So that's going to be fun to watch when these guys finally get their first unpadded practices. I think the 14th, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be the first, truly unpadded practice. Give or take. So we're going to get to see how these guys cover a pretty good group of wide receivers, and this is an open competition, man. I don't see, Paul, in my opinion, anyone having like the incumbent leg up. This guy, he'll get the benefit of the doubt. To me, there's no benefit of the doubt here. This is you play the best, you play. And guess what? And this is going to sound weird, and maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way, but if you get to halftime of that first week and like Deontay Johnson or Juju Smith-Schuster, put one of these guys in a blender for a half, we might see the next guy up after just a half of football. I think there's a chance of that.
I would not be surprised, which is why I said to you that it would not shock me if Darnay Holmes wins the slot job out of default. Because if nobody seizes it, okay, if nobody just grabs the job by the throat, I could understand why you would take the young prospect and the draft choice who really came on and showed he could do it at the Senior Bowl and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this guy can do it quicker and better than anybody else can. Let's just throw him into the deep end of the pool and see what we get. That's why I say Darnay Holmes to me is the dark horse at the slot spot. I'll give you a dark horse at the corner spot on the boundary, and that would be Christian Angulo. I just there's something that's telling me that his time at Cincinnati, I did research on the kid. He's 6'2", John. I mean, you don't find a lot of corners 6'2" who can play press man. And I know he was doing it at Hampton last year, but his time at Cincinnati was a washout. He admits he had immaturity issues. He admits that he had some really difficult times with the coaching staff, and he is a big, tall, strong corner with tremendous range. I mean, look at the wingspan on this guy. He is a very impressive specimen. And so he was at the University of Cincinnati for 2 years, and everything went wrong, and he admits that a lot of it was his attitude. He had a lot of growing up to do, and he and the coaching staff butted heads every which way. So after 2 years, he transfers out, and he winds up going to Hampton. And, you know, I get it. Hampton's a small program. You know, he's going to dominate. He had 14 passes defense last year, all right, knocking down balls left and right. He had 5 in one game against Howard and 4 in one game against Charleston Southern. Now, people are going to say, well, the level of competition. Clearly, he was a high-level D1 player because he was recruited at Cincinnati, and they kept him there for a couple of years. So he's obviously got the talent and the skill set to play at that level. So he steps down, supposedly, if you're to believe everything that I've heard about him now coming from the people at Hampton, because I did some research, they said, boy, he was exemplary. He took to the teaching. He matured. He's really a go-getter. He understands he's got a second lease on life. He can't believe he actually got an opportunity now at the NFL after getting such a late start, getting his life on track. All I'm saying is, John, he has a very high-level skill set. It's a unique skill set. He is my real deep dark horse in that secondary.
That's a good one. Undrafted free agent this year. And again, it's going to be tough for those guys to make an impression, Paul, because there's no games for these guys. And
you're right.
And as I made this point with you and Jeff Eagles last Friday, you know, you've been doing this longer than me. I've been doing it, you know, this is my 14th, 15th training camp.
Okay.
Where you see guys that are great in practice that get in games and it just doesn't work. I mean, it happens all the time, right? So judging and trying to figure out who those guys are, especially for undrafted free agents, is going to be a challenge.
One thing I will say, when you look at a 6'2" corner with length, his visuals will jump off the page at practice immediately. So you'll notice him, and if he does well, it will be very good for him. If he doesn't do well, it will stick out like a sore thumb, and he's not going to stick very long.
Yeah, and if you go back, obviously, you know, Brandon Browner in New England, people from that tree do appreciate those bigger cornerbacks that can play that physical brand of football.
Yes, exactly. So we will see.
No question about it.